everybody, welcome again. I'd just like to start by saying the University of Western Australia acknowledges the Whadjuk Noongar people as the traditional owners of the land on which it's situated. Whadjuk Noongar remain the spiritual and cultural custodians of their land, and we acknowledge the strength of their culture and offer our respects to elders past, present and emerging. And further, Australia always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So welcome to week 3. We think we've broken the back of Microsoft Teams. There's probably going to be more ongoing issues, so just please continue to bear with us. But one of them is hopefully going to alleviate some of the issues. We're dissolving Eventbrite in terms of the seminar series, because with Microsoft Teams, you have to register in order to get into the Teams seminars. So Eventbrite quickly became quite redundant in terms of the registration process. So we'll no longer be advertising our seminars through Eventbrite. Going forward, you'll receive one email each Friday containing the following week's Teams registration link. So if you're unsure or worried whether you're on our seminar email list, please either email myself or Emily Gray, and we will make sure that you are on there. And I know it's a little bit short notice, but we've got an opening on May the 4th. So if anybody is interested in presenting for our seminar series, please get in touch. So the seminars are recorded. Whether or not they do go on YouTube is up to the speaker and obviously community permissions. So I think in breaking Teams is back, none of you should be able to speak at the moment or have your cameras on. So at the end of Hendri's talk today, I will make it so that we can have a bit of a discussion. So joining us today is Hendri Kaharudin. Hendri completed his undergraduate degree in archaeology at the Universitas Jajamaja in Yogyakarta with an honours thesis on zooarchaeology on Kisar Island. In 2020, Hendri completed his master's at ANU and is now focusing on his PhD research on prehistoric archaeology in Indonesia. Focus on Echinoidea and Malacostraca, subsistence in the Indo-Pacific region. And I'm super excited. Let's hear more from Hendri. So thank you. I will just unshare. Stopping share. Okay. Over to you.
Thank you, India. I'm gonna start sharing. Can you see it? Hello?
Yes, I can see that. You just, if you share it, yes, perfect.
All right, so hello everyone. My name is Hendri and I'm currently a PhD student from at Australian National University. And all right, this afternoon we're gonna talk about the coastal foraging, the archaeology of Echinoidea and Malacostraca in Wallacea. First of all, for introduction, what is Echinoidea? So it's basically just a fancy term for sea urchin. This the ball and spiny thing that you usually find in the beach. And it's sometimes if you step on it, it's gonna sting, and it's basically just their body is made of cartilaginous plates or similar to shellfish, and they are fivefold. The easier way to recognize them is they are fivefold. So they are in the same phylum of echinoderm with sea cucumber and sea star and sand dollar. So with sea star, you can see that they have like 5 legs easily, but sea urchin actually have the same fivefold thing, but you just have to see it like deeper. Sometimes you can see it in their color. Sometimes you have to look on their body organ, and they are one of the indicator of healthy ecosystem health, reef ecosystem health. So if you go to the beach and you see a lot of sea urchin, that usually the beach is unhealthy because the sea urchin is eating and grazing all the sea kelp, the seaweed, and they destroying the coral reef. So a decent amount of sea urchin population will be good for the coral reef, but if they are overpopulation, that's the alarming, like the one big thing, that's the sign that the coral reef is not healthy at all. And second one, what is Malacostraca? It's the largest class within the subphylum of Crustacea. Usually people call it Crustacea, but I don't want to use Crustacea here because if we're using Crustacea, we including barnacle, and biologically they have a lot of similarities, but culturally, because we're talking about archaeology, about how people catch them, how people treat them as food, and how people perceive them, it's really different between barnacle and other crustacean. So they are consist of crabs, lobster, prawns, crayfish, and krill. They have three tagmata, the head, the thorax, and abdomen, and they have a very wide ecological range, which is marine, freshwater, and terrestrial habitats. And what do they have in common? They both are really delicious food. So with Malacostraca or crabs, lobster, you can find it easily anywhere. You can find it in Woolworth or any traditional market, fish market, easily. But with the sea urchin, this is a bit tricky because you don't, like a lot of people don't know that we can eat that. But if you come from some other part of the world, like East Asia, like Japan or Korea or China, you name it, they eat that and they call it uni. And then if in Mediterranean countries, they call it erizo de mar or echinos. And they eat it too in Caribbean, or in New Zealand, they call it kina. And then in Hawaii, they call it all different things based on the species, because there is more than one species that you can consume. So yeah, so both of them are delicacy, but people treat it different way in different part of the world. And yeah, with sea urchin, the part that we can eat is the gonads, or we usually call it raw, and mostly consumed fresh. So people just can catch it, crack it open, eat it on the side, or mildly processed, usually steamed, seasoned, and grilled, depending on the cultural locality. And in some place in Japan, consuming sea urchin have a historical and spiritual value in it. Like there is historical stuff in that. So the sociological perspective is really different. It's similar to, but a little bit different with the Malacostraca word, like lobster. Lobster was used to be like, right now lobster is really expensive, and it's like if you can't eat it every day. But yeah, back then it used farmer as fertilizer in the field, and if you eat lobster, people will think that you are very poor family, because why would you eat something that doesn't have a lot of meat when you can eat fish? But both are really important source for protein for coastal and island communities, and relatively easier to catch if you want to catch it bare hand, rather than doing like deep fishing technique. Like if you want salmon or thing, that's harder to catch compared to sea urchin and crabs. All right, like, but do they eat that during prehistoric time? So because we are in archaeology, we wanna go back in time and see and track when the first time they start eating this stuff. So apparently there's a lot of sites that report that people have been eating both of sea urchin and crabs, lobster, and non-shellfish invertebrate coastal resources. One of them is in Leangsaru Talaut. This is one island in the top of Wallacea here, and then there's a lot of like at least 3 sites in Timor-Leste in the east, Timor-Leste, north of Australia, and then Mo'ohono Cave in Sulawesi, the big island, and then Kisar, Herosrot in Tapai. This is a small island here on the north of Timor-Leste, and then Pantar. It's the island next to Alor here, and then Alor, and then Obi Island here. So basically, you can find it all over Wallacea, and they have a really very like different antiquities. Like some of them is occupied since 40,000 years ago, some another just like 10,000 years ago. But it's been like they keep consuming continuously both of the resources. So before we go deeper, we're gonna talk about what's Wallacea, why we care about Wallacea. So Wallacea is this water this continent, the area between 2 continental landmass. So there is in the east there is Sunda, where right now is consists of mainland Southeast Asia, Borneo, Sumatra, and Java, half of Indonesia. And in the east, there is New Guinea in Australia, which become like Sahul landmass. But in between of Sunda and Sahul, there is always this island area that's never connected with land bridge. So in order people to cross from Africa to Australia at least 50,000 or 65,000 years ago, they have to go through this water barrier. So because it's always separated by water, and like this island is joined especially during last glacial maximum when the water is really low, especially like the lowest thing is 135 below current sea level. And since then, like the maritime subsistence strategy is really high in this area, in Wallacea area. And they have a really good biogeographical distincts, not only in the marine but also in the terrestrial fauna. Like you can find like giant rats in Timor-Leste, or the one that you can still see now is like Komodo dragon. And there used to be stegodon pygmy, like the small stegodon in Sulawesi, because these two, like Sunda and Sahul, have really different biogeographical, like really different animal type. But this Wallacea place is the transition between the two. And after last glacial maximum, the sea level, so last glacial maximum is in Pleistocene, is about 25 to 21,000 years ago. And after that, the sea level is start rising. And well, a lot of people think like a rising sea level will all the island will submerge, and people will it's gonna make them hard to leave. But that's probably not how it's happened in the coastal area, because when the sea level is rising, they make a swamp, they make more beaches, more coastline, and more estuaries. So a lot of coastal habitat, they flourish. So people that have developed a good marine subsistence strategy, they thriving. They like when the sea level is getting higher, and that's also recorded in a lot of sites in Wallacea. So after last glacial maximum, there is a lot of sites that start to be occupied that doesn't have a record of occupation before. Some of them is in Timor, or in Roti, or in Alor, on Morotai, Aru, a lot of places. After last glacial maximum, when the sea level is rising, they start to be occupied, or some people that some sites that have been abandoned during last glacial maximum, they come back to the site, and the intensity of the occupation record is become like tighter, like bigger. So after last glacial maximum, you usually, if you dig a cave after last glacial maximum, usually you can find a lot of shell midden. That's every time you dig and you grab a bucket, put it, and half of them probably gonna be shellfish and fish bones and sea urchin and crabs and all that, and half of them probably just random sediment. So yeah, this is some of the example of showing how high the marine subsistence strategy in Wallacea. So in Makpan Cave in Alor, we found there is coral tools that probably they use it to make a shellfish, and then they also make a shellfish from they make a fish hook from shellfish, and also they make shell beads. And we also find this burial with goods, with burial goods and shellfish and shell in here, like on the side of her skull. This is in Tronbonle Alor. So yeah, marine subsistence strategy is really fundamental part of their life, and even until now. So yeah, research objective. We know that Wallacea have a really rich aquatic biodiversity hotspot, and it's one of the best places that record maritime subsistence strategy since late Pleistocene. And lately, there is more and more report on a lot of sites that say that they found sea urchin like Echinoidea and Malacostraca, which is crab and lobster and the others. So with this a lot of abundance, there is a lot of possible research that we can explore. One of them is the quantification methods, like how we gonna quantify them. Do we want to just weight them, or we use MNI or NESP? And then what's the species distribution, like what species they eat, what's the species they don't, and then the change of throughout occupation periods, because they live in the cave for thousands and thousands of years, so they will be changing. And when we know that the species distribution, what the species distribution is, we will know what the type of coastal ecosystem exploited. So some of them is probably rocky shore, or probably some of them, like back then, is sandy shore or muddy place or something like that. And the relation with other food resource, because they also eat fish, they also eat shellfish, they also eat turtle, and all other terrestrial fauna. Usually not the big fauna, usually just rats or snakes when you are digging in the small island. But yeah, this relation between all the food resources is really interesting. And then the relation to climate and sea level change over time, because when the climate is changing, like the resource supply will be changing too. So probably they're gonna have to shift to other food resource if they have to. And then the reason behind it, like why they eat sea urchin and crabs, is it purposeful strategies or simply opportunistic behavior? Like, do they actually really just want to collect shellfish, and but they just, oh, there is crab, let's just put it, or oh, there is sea urchin, let's just put it in the bucket, something like that, or they come and intentionally targeting these two resources. That's one of the question. And then the dietary role, is it like staple or delicacy? Like, do they like eat it really regularly? And the way they hunt, the butcher, and the processing method, what the tool and the season and the family role is really important too, because like some of the ethnographic studies in Pacific, especially in the old days, they say that the male is going to the sea and they go fishing, like to go deep sea fishing, but then the female family member, they help with collecting shellfish and then sea urchin and crabs with all the little kids in the coastal area. But that's probably not true in a lot of places. That's probably true in some places, but that's probably not true in a lot of places, because like one of the things that we know from previously, like this burial with shellfish in it, she is a female. So in some places they have really different cultural family job stuff. But we're also facing up problems, because Echinoidea and Malacostraca is hardly reported on early time research publication. So if you dig deeper into the 90s or even older research, it's gonna be hard to find like sea urchin and crab in their excavation report. It's probably they don't find it, probably that site doesn't have it, but probably they just don't report it, because like in order to get this animal remains, you need to get a really small mesh size. So after you dig the site, after you dig the cave, you shift it, and if your shift is if your mesh size is bigger than 2 millimeter, you're gonna lose all the remains. And it's after, and you need to do wet shifting too, but it's gonna be hard if you dig a site that far away from the beach or from far away from the river, because when you do wet shifting, all the color will be just come out. Like, so you can separate shellfish, bone, sea urchin, crab easily, but if you don't, they will be covered in mud or in charcoal or whatever. So it's hard to see the color. So people will miss that a lot if they don't have the time and the resource to do a proper excavation. And it's probably missed during initial sorting stage, because when you dig a really deep site, sometimes you don't have the time, because you probably just have one month or 2 months in the field, and you have to employ local person, and they don't really know what they are looking at. So in the sorting stage, you probably miss some stuff, and then misidentification, because some part is really hard to distinguish. Like this one in the right, this is a lot of people mistakenly think that this is part of bones, maybe fish ribs or snake ribs, but it's actually sea urchin spines. Compared to the one in the right corner here, this is sea urchin spines too, from different species. So yeah, they are pretty distinct. And this thing in the middle, it's we call it demi-pyramid. It's part of the jaw apparatus, like the jaw apparatus of sea urchin. But a lot of us mistakenly think that this is like the acorn barnacle, especially if we are not very familiar with it. So yeah, a lot of misidentification. Even crabs, like a lot. If we sometimes when we dig it, the crabs is shiny and a bit hard just because of the sedimentation. So a lot of people think that that's a shellfish, but actually it's a crabs. And also there is a really limited reference collection even in Australia. Like if you go to a museum in Sydney, yes, they have a lot of crab reference collection, even though it's in a whole, it's not fragmented. But with sea urchin, most of them they have the wet collection, so it's still in a jar and they still have the flesh and stuff. Well, what you need is the one that already dry and show their inner body. So yeah, like we really need to make this reference collection, just like we have all the reference collection for big terrestrial animal and reptile and mammals. And most analysis are more focused on artifact, lithic, or vertebrate remains, which is understandable, and we need a lot more people working on this stuff. But we also need some people working on the other part. So when we report some site, we don't ignore half of the data that we have. So yeah, it's a big work. So this is what you're expecting when you are working with sea urchin and crabs. So in the left sea urchin, you can see like the test or the shell of the sea urchin, and then the spines, and this is like the mouth part, the jaw apparatus. So it's in a crabs, and same with crabs. It's heavily fragmented because like you just can't avoid it. When people find it in the beach, they have to crack it open to access the body. Same with crab. You have like usually we use that hammer thing to crack it open, and some crabs even they eat the whole thing. If when you eat the small crab, you eat like the whole, like the shell as well, not just the meat. So and then after they toss it away and they throw it away, like the sediment keep like even crush it more, so it become more crumble. So sea urchin and crab in archaeological context is really different than in paleontological context, because in paleontology all they have is they are still intact and fossilized, so you can identify their species like relatively easier. But in archaeological context, it's all crumble. And this is two of the parts that we need to keep in mind. First of all, like the chelai, the pincher of crab and lobster, because when we find it, you can do MNI and NASP with this, like the counting quantification methods. And this is the good start when you want to identify their species. And also the same with sea urchin. This is the Aristotle lantern or the jaw apparatus. So this is like in the bottom of the ball. So it's it has a lot of parts. Here we have the rotula and epiphysis and the teeth. The teeth is actually really long, but it's mostly always in fragmented. So we rarely find it like in a hole. And then this demi-pyramid is in here. It becomes V. So if you find it, like every sea urchin have 10, like 5 left and 5 right. So if you find like 5, then you can say that, oh, this is one sea urchin, something like that. So you can do the quantification with it. And they're not just using it for food, they're also using it for artifact. This is the one from Hawaii that they use it for ornamental artifact. And then they use it also for upgrading tools. It's also in Hawaii, which is pretty common. And they use it also for offering in the fishing shrines. You can find sea urchin in a lot of fishing shrines because they usually look really pretty artistic when they are dry. And then case studies. So I got involved in 2 different excavation in Indonesia. One in Alor Island, it's in here in the north of Timor-Leste, and then in Kisar Island. and I'm planning to do one in Tanimbar Island. So all the blue dot is the prehistoric cave and rock shelter that have been dated. So yeah, we did a good and pretty intensive research on Wallacea, but there is still a lot, hundreds, maybe thousands of islands that we need to come and do research over there, because like, yeah, why not? The first one is Makwan Cave in Alor Island. So we have the dating record that this cave is been occupied since 40,000 years ago, and it's heavily dependent on marine resources. It's probably like 3 or 4 kilometers from the coast, from the beach. When you're standing in the cave, you can see like the beach, like it's in the right top corner here. You can see the beach in front of you, yeah. And then we dig 2 by 2 meters excavation pit, but we focus on 1 by 1 to 4 meters deep into the sediment, the cave sediment, and we recover 4 kilogram of Malacostraca and 13 kilogram of sea urchin. So this is one of the oldest and most abundant sea urchin consumption recorded. There is a lot of other sites in Hawaii that probably have similar, like if you go to their fishing shrine, they probably have a lot of sea urchin remains as well. But this one is dated to 40,000 years ago, so it's one of the oldest. And then they have a lot of variation on the species diversity. One of them is Tomopneustes variolaris, and then Echinometra, and Heterocentrotus mammillatus. Same with crabs, that we find a lot of different species. And the different species that we can see here, this is the Heterocentrotus mammillatus, or a slate pencil urchin, and this is the burrowing urchin. They eating on the coral reef, and they like to hide between the rocks. And this is black long spine urchin, or Tomopneustes variolaris. All of them are usually living in a tidal zone, but when you want to get them, you usually have to like do simple diving. So you can't just like strolling on the beach and then grab it. Some of them may be trapped in the beach, but you have to do a simple diving to get them. But the crab that we found have like really diverse ecological differences. So there is a fiddler crab that's really small, and then mud crab, which usually live in a mud area, and the splendid crab and blue swimmer. Some of them living in the sandy beach, some of them living in the like a little bit deeper area of the tidal zone. Yeah. And the second cave is the Herosorot and Tapa cave in Kisar Island. We found the occupation record of 15,000 years ago, and they are heavily dependent on marine resources, the same, but they have really different species diversity, because in this site the species that mostly targeted is Solobocentrotus atratus, which look like this. So this type of species they usually live in a rocky shore, and it's really shallow. Usually it's probably like knee deep, or in a cliff area when the channel is really deep, so they don't have a beach, so they just like cliff. So we can find this helmet urchin easily over there. And when we find like one type of sea urchin that most common, we usually can do this geometric or morphometric studies. When you when you estimate the change of the body size throughout the age, throughout the period of occupation. Say the site have been occupied since 15,000 years ago. So maybe during Pleistocene, the size is probably bigger or smaller, or so based on by using this measurement, you can estimate their size of the sea urchin, and then you can estimate the meat yield and the nutritional value and their part for food resource. And there is a pattern of indication between the two sides. So we know that both sea urchin and crabs is most always exploited when the site is close to the beach or to the coastal area, or if the site is in the island. But they also exploited when the site is terrestrial site, even in a smaller quantity. And sea urchin usually appear more regularly when the site is on initial occupation. Like in Macpan, we see at the Echinoidea in the early, so we see the early occupation is the bottom one. So they're pretty high compared to crab here in the Decapoda here, which almost none in their early occupation. And there is Chiripedia here is barnacle, and mollusca here is shellfish. So shellfish, there is a little bit of barnacle, but sea urchin, like, they pretty high. And then they're high again here in the middle of occupation period, well everything else is still pretty low. But when the sea level is rising and all they make the new estuaries, coral reef blooming, shellfish and barnacle and crabs start to be more easily found in the sediment, while sea urchin start decreasing for some reason. Similarly in Macpan here, like in the early occupation record is pretty high. It's here, so we read it from the right to left, from 15,000 years ago to current time. So in the early occupation record, sea urchin is pretty high, and then it's keep increasing and then decreasing. On contrary, with shellfish, they're low during the initial occupation, and then they increasing really high. They usually have similar pattern with barnacle and crabs. So yeah, it's interesting, and there's possible anti-correlation between sea urchin and crab or lobster, because they are like, crab and lobster is a scavenger, so they basically eat everything. When their population is high, they probably targeting sea urchin as well. So there is a possibility that that sea urchin abundance is probably lower when the crab is higher, and so the prehistoric human can't access them. But so far, the statistical it's not significant statistically, so there is possible, but we don't know yet. And this is my plan for my future research. I'm gonna do research on Tanimbar Island, which is here in the edge of Wallacea. So why I'm doing it here? Because among all those islands, this is one of the island group that we didn't do any archaeological research yet. Well, it's really close to the Sahul landmass here when Australia and Papua joined together. So it's gonna be interesting for like prehistoric, the old time, like from 50,000 years ago, or probably just like historical time. And compared to other site in Gebe here or in Rote, which is like the outer island of Wallacea, they are all already excavated, but Tanimbar Island is still pristine. And yeah, so there is some previous research on Tanimbar Island that we know that they have megalithic sites. We know that they have bronze drum and they have like secondary burial. So when you go to the like shallow cave, you can find a lot of human skull in the site, and they have a lot of caves in one of the island. But there is not a lot of archaeological like excavation yet in the area. And in the surface area, we can see like they have decorated pottery, they have like megalithic, dolmen, and colonial artillery, and they have caves and lithic in the surface. Also, some of the site probably gonna be tricky to be excavated. Like no, we can't just excavate all the set because some sets probably sacred. So yeah, need a special approach. And I'm planning to do the field work in Tanimbar Island, doing excavation at least for 2 months. And yeah, my analysis will be more focusing on this Echinoidea and Malacostraca remains. And I'm gonna also do ethnographic studies because some of the question you can only answer it using ethnographic studies, like how they eat it, and then the family role and stuff. This is the picture this is the sea urchin pile that we found in Lombok Island. So even until today, people just come to the beach, like do a little bit diving, collecting sea urchin, and then eat it in the beach because we just eat it raw and then leave it there. Same, it's the bottom picture is the one in Timor Leste. So they do the sea urchin harvest because the part that you want to eat in sea urchin is the gonad or raw, but you have to know the specific time when the gonad is like full. So when you crack it open, you don't get like empty. So they only harvest it in a certain time of the year in some communities. And the butchery method and how they process the foods, it's interesting. And how they're customary. So this sasi, in Wallacea, in some part of Maluku, they have this sasi laut. It's called sasi laut. So it's when the community say not to go fishing or not to targeting some of the animals. So maybe in like for 3 months we're not gonna eat sea urchin and sea cucumber and like tuna or crabs. So the animal have time to reproduce and make it flourish again, so they don't extinct. But in some place it's already people don't do this anymore, but in some other they still do this sasi laut. So it's going to be interesting to record their custom. And this is my reference, and thank you. Back at you.
Okay,
India, thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Hendri. I think we all learned quite a lot about urchins. Does anyone in here have any questions immediately? I might just go on to my questions. So I was just wondering about, you mentioned that taxonomic identifications are difficult for a range of reasons, some of those being that museums keep those specimens in, ethanol, I suppose, to preserve them. So have you said about creating your own reference collection, or are you able to get by in terms of manuals that might be out there, or will you develop, a reference collection for ANU.
Yeah, so that's one of my goal. I really want to make one for either for ANU or for Australian Museum, because like it can be accessible in Sydney for everyone. But the problem is like sometimes we only have like 1 or 2 months in the field, and if we don't allocate that months to specifically to build reference material, you won't have any time, because you will need like employ some people to do the diving, or we do it diving ourselves, collect it, or we buy it from some fisherman. But when we have the wet thing, we need to dry it in the field, and it probably takes like at least a month to dry it. So and transporting it, it's gonna be tricky too, because they're really smelly if you it's let alone in Australia. Like transport it to Australia gonna be tricky, but transport it, like say we can just transport it to other part in Indonesia and just leave it dry, it's gonna be hard too, because if you don't put it in a sealed place, they're gonna be really smelly. So yeah, that's one thing that I really want to make, like one reference collection, but yeah, need to be plan it like really on really detail. And also species the species, like in New Zealand, they have like different type of species that they consume, with in Indonesia and in Japan as well, obviously. So yeah, you just need to go to the certain island if you want to get some certain species. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it sounds like an immense, that's one of the reasons why I asked it, because it's quite similar in a number of smaller disciplines within archaeology. I know I have my own problems in archaeobotany, dealing and building reference collections, and herbaria have the exact same thing. They just collect the flowers to make their identifications. So
also, just like shellfish, there is also a website that you can visit that they have like a dry example of sea urchin, so you can just compare it, but it's not perfect, like they still miss a lot of collection, but it's a good way to start.
absolutely, it's definitely a starting point. If anyone online has any questions, I think you can raise your hand if there's anything there. Oh, is there something in the chat? Okay, hang on. Something in the chat. Oh, okay. Temporarily join the chat. Well, I have a range of questions. So when you go to Tanimbar, you'll be running a range of ethnographical, I suppose, studies with people there. Will you use that opportunity to do some experimental studies and keep, you know, potentially the pieces that have sort of broken down? Obviously, it might be a problem to get them back into the country. Is that on your plan?
Yep. So yeah. So I'm gonna do a lot of maybe ethnographical studies, from like the way they live. Maybe not just on about like sea urchin and crabs, but can be other things too. But yeah, it's really interesting if we can see how they catch it and how they cook it, and how the butchery method, and like do they do anything with the waste and stuff like that. And I probably don't even have to bring everything to Australia. I can just keep it in Indonesia and put it in the museum, or like the official, the local official office, and just let them have it as their collection. And this Tanimbar Island is also really interesting, because they're like back then when the Makasan people do the trading with the Aboriginal people with the teripang, like the sea cucumber. Tanimbar Island is one of the spot where they stop, because they have like really good quality of sea cucumber. So before they go to Australia, they stop in Tanimbar and then get sea cucumber as much as they want, and then sell it to the Chinese. So yeah, like their hotspot is really good for price for marine subsistence strategy in general, in the old time, in the historic time, in the colonial time, or even today?
Yeah, I think it looks to be quite a severely under-researched area, especially in terms of its geographical location and everything like that. But I did want to ask as well, so in terms of your sorting and quantifying, are you splitting it? Burnt remains from unburnt remains? Or are there any burnt remains?
Yeah, it's really hard to see like the burn mark on sea urchin. I don't think maybe they don't burn it. I don't see the difference, because with bones you can see it clearly. Like some bones are black and then dark blue and then white and then just like really different spectrum of burn mark. But with the sea urchin, like you can't even see anything. Like it's just like all white. And same with crabs. Like I don't think you can see it and like as easily as bones. I'm not sure either. Maybe need to do some what you call that? Experimental archaeology. Yes, that's the word.
It's always fun as well.
Yeah.
So Carly in the chat says, sorry if I missed it, but I know several ANU researchers have been working on a digitised reference collection for vertebrate fauna. Has this been attempted for marine invertebrates?
Yeah, we have quite a few of fish. We have quite a few of shellfish. We have maybe 1 or 2 specimen of crabs, but then that's it, I think. Well, that's what in my department. I'm not sure if they have in biology, but again, like in biology, I assume like the sea urchin will be in ethanol, like really wet. But you want to try one?
Well, I suppose we just all need to get out to the restaurants and destroy our oceans even more.
Yeah.
Okay, the only one left here. So if there's no further questions in the chat, which I can't see any, I might end it here, Hendri, and just thank you again for your time today and for your presentation. It was wonderful. And yeah, thanks for presenting for our UWA seminar series. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. See ya.
Thanks very much.
That went really well, India.